I've been a Pokemon fan for as long as I can remember. However, not in the exact same way as everyone else. I was not introduced to Pokemon from any of the games. However, I started my Pokemon adventures by watching the anime on Saturday mornings, collecting the trading cards, and I actually still have a pretty decent collection to this day. I didn't even know there were Pokemon games until much later in my life. However, I finally decided to try out a Pokemon game with Pokemon Sword and Shield. And man, I hated the game. I liked nothing about it. The turn-based battling style just never really clicked with me, and due to me hating battles, I skipped all the battles, which meant I was underleveled, which meant I struggled with gym leaders, which meant I hated the game even more. And because of that, I never played another Pokemon game, or RPG in general, for many years. However, after I played Pokemon Legends EA last year, and loved it, I decided I would go back to Sword and Shield, since I really wanted another Pokemon experience. And man, I didn't realize how much I would end up enjoying the game. This game genuinely shocked me. By the time I played this game, I was aware of all the hate surrounding the game, the criticisms of it being too easy, Gigantamax being a bad gimmick, having a bad story, the trees, the National Dex controversy, the frickin' XP share controversy. However, while my time playing the game wasn't perfect, and I definitely agree with some of the criticisms about the game, this was still a very enjoyable experience, and now it's time for me to talk about it. The game starts off with you watching a video introducing the champion, Leon the Unbeatable. And to start off, this guy sucks. One thing that a champion in Pokemon is supposed to do is be intimidating. It's supposed to make you feel like they're on a whole other level compared to you, making it so that when you finally beat them at the end of the game, you feel accomplished. And considering they make this guy the most powerful trainer in the entire Pokemon universe, you'd think they'd do a good job setting this guy up. Except, no! Not only is his design similar to a kid cosplaying as champion, I mean, come on man, lose the damn cape. However, they make him incredibly stupid and childish, compared to the actual child main protagonist. His main character trait that they keep harping on throughout the whole game is that he gets lost all the time, which makes absolutely no sense in the context of the game, when everything is connected by straight lines. He also never does anything impressive during the entire game. Even during the darkest day, Leon doesn't do crap, and it's up to you and Hop in his friggin' Dubwool to take care of it. However, that's all the champion slander for now. After that, the intro video wraps up, and we get introduced to our main rival and childhood friend, Hop. Hop is by far my favorite character in the entire game, but we'll talk about him in a minute. After you're introduced to Hop, you get the typical Pokemon shebang. Leon gives you and Hop your choice of starting Pokemon, Grookey, Sobble, and Scorbunny, aka 7, 4, and 9. Then you and Hop battle. The next day you get your Pokedex, Dynamax bands, and then you're off on a journey to collect all 8 gym badges and defeat the champion at the Pokemon League to become the best like no one ever was. Okay, please stop using that in all your Pokemon videos. That is the most overused line in every video. You are not creative. However, in addition to taking on 8 gyms, sometimes you're forced to get a boring history lesson from Sonia, the professor's granddaughter, about stuff like the Darkest Day and the legendary Sword and Shield Pokemon. And yeah, that stuff ain't interesting. However, out of all the aspects of this story, as I mentioned earlier, Hop is the best part. Hop is your main rival. However, he's also the champion's little brother, and just like his older brother, he wants to be champion. However, this game does something a little different than other Pokemon games. Usually in other Pokemon games, when you defeat your rival, they usually don't feel some type of way about it. You just fight your rival, and that's that. However, Hop has a lot to live up to, and while he's basically just the overly energetic kid for the first part of the game, after you beat the first 3 gyms, Hop gets into a battle with Bede, a very unimportant character. He doesn't matter at all. However, Hop loses this battle, and it gets him into a depression arc. He's not as energetic, he's a lot more insecure, and he realizes that maybe it's not possible for him to accomplish his dream. This makes his character more grounded and relatable, and also what makes him so enjoyable for me. And seeing him find his way throughout the back half of the game, and the post-game, is really satisfying. Another cool thing is that Hop never really gets jealous of the main character, and is really supportive, and makes them feel like a good friend. It's basically what Tawny should have been. Oh wait, I have to talk about the Darkest Day now. Crap. Basically, Chairman Rose, an unimportant character who doesn't come up at all, mostly, says that Galar could be going through an energy crisis in the coming years, and instead of coming up with a reasonable plan to make new forms of renewable energy, he instead decides to awaken the legendary Pokemon Eternatus and basically cause the destruction of the region. So Hop and you have to stop Eternatus. This just sucks. It just feels like padding between the champion fight. On top of that, it gives you a free legendary for the final fight against Leon, so yeah, that's just great. And also, besides the Hop stuff, the post-game story sucks. I don't know what they were thinking. Basically, some rich bumhole stenches decide to start randomly Dynamaxing Pokemon and you have to stop them, which leads to a fight against the box legendaries. It's pretty boring. So, the story isn't great, but how's the gameplay? It's Pokemon. You still get to run around, battle wild Pokemon, clench your butt as tightly as possible, hoping that somehow makes the Pokemon get into the damn Pokeball, scream and slam your controller when the Pokemon doesn't go in for no reason, and battle trainers and gym leaders. This gameplay loop is just as good as ever. However, this game did bring about a few controversies, or 2 or 10 or whatever. The National Dex controversy, or the Dexit controversy, basically made it so that not all previous Pokemon could be transferred into this game. While this does suck, I mean, I'm not able to play as my boy Greninja, and that makes me very sad. This was going to happen eventually, however. Having over 1,000 Pokemon in a singular game, it's eventually going to get more and more unrealistic, especially considering Game Freak has stated that they want at least 10,000 Pokemon. There's also the forced XP share controversy. In short, XP share is a feature that allows the XP you gain to be shared with all of the Pokemon in your party. In previous games, it was an optional item. However, in this game, XP share is forced on the player. This makes the game way easier and cuts down on grinding. However, I generally don't think this is a bad thing. While it sucks that there is no option to turn it off for players who want an extra challenge, however, at the end of the day, Pokemon is a kid series. These games are for everyone, and having features that make the games easier isn't a bad thing, as long as it doesn't make the games mindless. And the game never really felt mindless, for me at least. However, aside from that, there are a few changes to the core formula. Obviously, there are new Pokemon, some of my favorites being Cinderace, Duraludon, Rillaboom, Centiskorch, and Hatchrim. However, they added a new battle gimmick to the game, Dynamax. Ever since Gen 6, Pokemon has tried adding a new gimmick to the main battle formula. X and Y introduced Mega Evolution, Pokemon Sun and Moon introduced Z-moves, Scarlet and Violet introduced Terastallization, and Sword and Shield introduced Dynamax. And man, they should have just stuck to Mega Evolution. I don't want to come across as hating everything that's not Megas. I like Z-moves a good bit, and Dynamax and Terastallization are cool concepts. However, none of these gimmicks are as cool as Mega Evolution. You should have just designed more Megas. However, back to Dynamax. It makes your Pokemon big, and your moves are more powerful for 3 turns before turning back to normal. I think it's not a bad gimmick, it's just overall uninteresting. Most Pokemon don't get new design changes, and the new powerful moves don't look as flashy as some of the normal moves. However, some Pokemon can Gigantamax. Gigantamaxing is Dynamax, but more special. Gigantamax Pokemon get a cool design change, and it also gives them an exclusive G-Max move. For some reason, the starters don't get this, at least in the base game, but when a Pokemon does get it, it's pretty cool. Also, you can't Dynamax whenever you want. You can only do them in gym battles in certain areas. However, this sucks. I mean, Mega Evolution, Z-moves, Terastallization, you can use that crap when you want. And having Gigantamaxing and Dynamaxing exclusive to certain areas just makes it feel way less important than the other gimmicks. However, this is all without mentioning the newest addition to the formula, the Wild Area. Basically a giant open world for you to chill, catch Pokemon, and take on Dynamax dens. This place, looks aside, actually works decently well. I do have my issues with it. For one, there's almost no reason to go there. None of the main game takes place in the wild area, so there's no reason to go there in between gyms or any other time. Sure, you can upgrade your team there, but the routes you travel to get to the gyms also give you new powerful Pokemon as well. However, it's still fun to explore. Running around and catching Pokemon is a fun gameplay loop, so being able to do it in an open area is really fun. It really sells the idea of you just being a kid on a quest to be the best of the best. Okay, enough Pokemon anime references. Also, Dynamax dens were a really cool idea. Taking on wild Dynamax Pokemon is really cool, and being able to do that with up to 4 friends is a genius idea. In most Pokemon games, while you could always battle and trade with your friends, there weren't really any opportunities to journey the region with your friends, or work cooperatively in any way. And while this isn't exactly what I want from Pokemon, it's really cool teaming up with friends to take these guys down. And if you don't have friends, you can always have CPUs to help out, which is nice. The main gyms are just as good as the other games. The only thing I'd say is that the gym challenges suck. These things are boring. Enough said. So the presentation is one of the most controversial aspects of the game. Guys, the trees! It looks like an N64 game, or a PS2 game, or a PS3 game. Okay guys, can we settle on what console generation these games look like? I hear a different generation every single time Pokemon is discussed. However, I don't think the game looks entirely bad. When it comes to the wild area, yeah, this game looks pretty rough. Textures are really low resolution, everything's pixelated, things pop in and out all of the time, weather randomly changes, it's pretty bad. However, in the towns and on the routes, the game looks generally good. While some of the problems still carry over, like things being pixelated and the textures not being that good, in my opinion, the character models and Pokemon models look pretty good. The battle animations and the Dynamax animations look really solid for the most part, especially the unique Pokemon move animations. However, my biggest problem with the presentation easily is the lack of voice acting. It still baffles me that all modern Pokemon games still have yet to get any voice acting. It's a necessity for almost all RPGs, and considering Xenoblade, Fire Emblem, Zelda, heck, even Kirby and the Forgotten Land has more voice acting than Pokemon, and that's frickin' Kirby. This is something that's been long overdue, and while the story isn't that great in this game, I'd say the lack of voice acting makes it even worse. However, the soundtrack, on the other hand, is really good. There are numerous great tracks, such as Hop's theme, Sonia's theme, the gym battle theme, and a lot of others. While the rest of Sword and Shield is really controversial, I think that the soundtrack is still pretty good. All in all, Pokemon Sword and Shield are flawed games. I can't lie. The story is messy, the main gimmick Dynamaxing isn't perfect, the visuals of the game aren't perfect. However, I still think it's a fun game. Sure, Pokemon is the highest grossing media franchise, and has the opportunity to make better games. However, looking at the game for what it genuinely is a consistent, fun experience from beginning to end. While, again, these games could be a lot better, and it sure would be nice if some of the issues at play weren't here. However, I do think the hate on these games is blown a little bit out of proportion. The numerous good aspects like the gameplay, Hawk, the new Pokemon, the music, blow out of proportion the bad and mixed aspects of the game. However, those issues still weigh it down to the point where I can't justify giving it more than like a 7 out of 10. But that's all from me. Thank you all for watching till the end. Make sure to like and subscribe, and yeah, that's it. Peace.